We're not fighting Ukrainians. We're fighting you.
In the West, you are described as a propagandist.
Because they're idiots, that's all. That's normal. Can you imagine anyone communicating with Merz, with Macron, after all that they said about our leader, about our people, about our country? America of the 90s, Europe of the 90s has nothing to do with modern days. Could you imagine people like Kaja Kallas being anywhere close to the European authorities with this level of education?
When did you for the last time criticize your President Putin?
All the time, every single day. We either win this war or there won't be any world left.
Grüezi miteinander, ganz herzlich willkommen zu dieser speziellsten aller Spezialsendungen von Weltwoche Daily, die andere Sicht, unabhängig, kritisch, gut gelaunt und zuversichtlich. Triggerwarnung, die folgende Sendung könnte Ihre Sensibilitäten reizen und sie könnte auch einige Ihrer Vorurteile ins Wanken bringen. Vielleicht auch nicht, vielleicht bestätigt sie auch Ihre Vorurteile. Schauen Sie sich das an, aber schauen Sie es sich an auf eigenes Risiko. Ich habe ein Interview gemacht, ein episches Interview von insgesamt fast 4 Stunden Dauer, aufgeteilt in 2 Folgen, mit einem Mann, mit dem man nicht reden sollte. Mit dem man nicht reden darf, geht es da nach den Meinungen des medialen Mainstreams in Europa, in der Schweiz. Ich habe ihn schon 2-mal getroffen und unsere Journalisten sind regelrecht ausgeflippt, als sie Wind davon bekommen haben. Und deshalb ist der Mann, um den es hier geht, mit einem Tabu belegt, mit einem Gesprächsbann. Aber Sie kennen mich inzwischen überall dort, wo es diese Sperrbezirke gibt, diese Verbotszonen der Auseinandersetzung, ja, da fühle ich mich geradezu magisch angezogen. Gibt's den Teufel, mache ich mit ihm ein Interview und vielleicht stellt sich heraus, dass die vermeintlichen Teufel am Ende auch nur arme Teufel oder immerhin, wie wir alle, Menschen sind. Und das hat mich natürlich auch wundergenommen bei dieser monumentalen Reizfigur Wladimir Solowjow. In Russland ist er ein Star? Ist er ein Held der Abendtalkshows? Millionen hängen an seinen Lippen seit Jahren. Es ist also keine Randfigur, sondern eine Person, die Dinge ausspricht, auf den Punkt bringt und auch in provokativer Schmerzensintensität so zuspitzt, dass sich Millionen von Russen darin wiedererkennen. In diesen Analysen, in diesen Ausfälligkeiten, in diesen Ungeheuerlichkeiten. Ja, es zieht einem manchmal die Schuhe aus, wenn man ihm zuhört. Ich habe dann auch dagegen gehalten, aber ich wollte ihn reden lassen. Und das ist dem Weltwoche-Publikum zuzumuten, meine Damen und Herren. Sie sind selbstbewusste Persönlichkeiten. Sie können dem ja mit souveräner Gelassenheit entgegentreten und das mal auf sich wirken lassen. Solowjow ist sozusagen ein wandelnder Resonanzkörper relevanter russischer Befindlichkeiten. Er bietet also einen Schlüssel zum besseren Verständnis Russlands und was uns in seiner Person entgegentritt, gerade natürlich auch mit Blick auf diesen Krieg in der Ukraine, das ist eine große Ernsthaftigkeit. Und das ist sehr, sehr wichtig, dass man diese Ernsthaftigkeit zur Kenntnis nimmt, weil sie kuriert einem, sie befreit einem vielleicht auch von einigen falschen Vorstellungen, die da bei uns unwidersprochen herumgeistern. Die wichtigsten biografischen Stationen. Wladimir Solowjow wurde geboren 1963 in Moskau in eine sehr prominente jüdische Familie. Er bezeichnet sich auch als gläubiger Jude. Seine Mutter hat ganz hervorragende Schulinstitute, Hochschulen geleitet. Er selber hat die besten Schulen besucht, Ingenieurswissenschaften studiert, ein Naturwissenschaftler, dann Ökonomie und Philosophie. Zu Beginn der 90er Jahre war er in den Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika als Universitätsdozent in Alabama, kehrte dann nach Russland zurück, wurde Geschäftsmann, Unternehmer, landete durch Zufall in den Medien, entwickelte Formate, erfolgreich Streitgespräche, schrieb Bücher. Doch den höchsten Orbit der internationalen Reizfiguren erreichte er mit dem Einmarsch der russischen Truppen in der Ukraine. Seither macht er jeden Abend 2,5 Stunden lang, 6 Tage die Woche, eine der erfolgreichsten Talkshows im russischen Fernsehen. Er kann auch zuhören. Am Morgen stundenlang Informationssendungen. Ich habe mit seinen Teammitgliedern gesprochen. Sie sagen, er hat nie ein Manuskript, keinen Teleprompter. Er hat auch kein Team von Rechercheuren. Er eignet sich das alles selber an. Und überzeugen Sie sich von seinen Argumenten. Er ist ein sehr vehementer Dialektiker, aber er trägt es auch, wenn man ihm widerspricht. Er fordert das heraus. Talk to me, aber bring mir Fakten, keine Meinungen. Wladimir Solowjow ist sanktioniert durch die Europäische Union, eben nicht, weil er sich da an Kriegsverbrechen beteiligt, sondern weil er Dinge sagt, die man nicht hören will und die er eben so sagt, dass sie tatsächlich wehtun. Aber meine Damen und Herren, das gehört eben auch zu einer offenen Gesprächskultur. Und diese brachial ehrlichen Rhetoriker sind mir lieber als diese salonfähige Verlogenheit, die wir da bei uns haben. Nein, Solowjow ist kein charmanter Lügner, aber ich hatte den Eindruck, dass er sehr authentisch und direkt auftritt und so natürlich auch die Auseinandersetzung sucht. Und das erachte ich als etwas sehr, sehr Fruchtbares. Vor allem aber auch kann er einem einen Zugang vermitteln, eben zum Denken relevanter Teile der russischen Bevölkerung und der russischen Elite. Urteilen Sie selbst, schauen Sie selbst. Ich wünsche Ihnen ein interessantes Diskussionsvergnügen. 2 Teile. Der erste erscheint heute, der zweite morgen. Der erste Teil ist etwas emphatischer, ist etwas biografischer. Der zweite Teil ist dann dialektischer. Da kracht's mitunter. Viel Vergnügen und seien Sie gespannt. Ich wiederhole, Triggerwarnung, zuschauen auf eigene Gefahr.
Wladimir Rudolfovich, let us not begin with politics, but let's begin with some personal questions.
Yes, please.
How would you describe yourself to a Western viewer who has heard a lot about you, but has not heard you directly?
Well, where should we start? Born in Moscow, so I'm a Muscovite, October 20th, 1963, in a Jewish family, not religious, but definitely Jewish, with extremely intelligent and well-educated parents. My mom is she's a legend. And my mom is the best thing that could ever happen with me. My mom is everything. Beautiful, smart, brilliant. And sometimes it happens that even beautiful mothers give birth to people that are hated in the West because they have no idea whom they hate. They just love to hate. I'm definitely Russian, of Jewish origin, and I'm extremely proud to be Russian. I think on Russian language. I adore my motherland. I do understand a lot about Russian history. I have 0 pink glasses, but I'm just old enough to see the world the way it is.
You're trained as an economist?
No, I'm, funny enough, an engineer. Soviet engineer. I graduated from Moscow Institute of Steel and Alloys, Physical Chemistry Department, with my specialization in diamonds, and with the diploma of honor. And then, yes, I spent 3 years as my postgraduate studies, working on my PhD for Institute of World Economy and International Relations. I entered this very highly respected academic institute when the director was the Mr. Yakovlev, a very well-known member of Politburo and at some moment of time ambassador to Canada. And he was extremely of democratic views during the Gorbachev era. And I finished my PhD when Primakov Evgeny Maximovich became director of this institute structure at this time.
And
So I knew Evgeny Primakov since 1988.
And you studied also philosophy, if I'm correct, and you taught in the United States.
Well, yes. Then I was invited to the University of Alabama School of Business Administration, Huntsville, where the grass is green and the sky is high, where men drive vehicles and women drive cars, and where the war is not over, and that's the Civil War, not any other war. I loved it.
How many years did you spend in the United States?
Not much. I spent a couple of years in the United States, but I've been on and off basis.
Oh.
And during the 90s, I spent a lot of time at Philippines, United Kingdom, States, was traveling a lot,
And
doing business.
And how did the academic become a broadcaster?
By mistake, obviously, made the wrong turn. At this time, I just realized that academic is fun, but nothing to study, should I say. In University of Alabama in Huntsville School of Business Administration, I worked as a visiting professor, and I had lectures on comparative economic studies. And then I became involved in business there, consultancy and manufacturing of disco lights, with very interesting gentlemen. Unfortunately, then our ways went separate, of British origin, who is one of the founding fathers of this lighting industry in the United Kingdom. And he invited me to get back to Russia, to start businesses there. Because back in the 90s, I made a couple of awful moves. One of them was to meet President of the United States of America, George Bush, father. And FBI was extremely surprised with my visit there, because at this time Russian citizens were not allowed easily to leave 30-mile zone. And they worked in Alabama, in Huntsville, and that's well known, one of the most interesting points in the United States in terms of rocket science. That's where Intergraph is, and the Redstone Arsenal. So it was okay to live there, but it was not okay to go to Washington without letting them know. So at a certain moment of time, I was invited to the office of this university, and I was advised, that, yeah, you're doing fine. We have a lot of people who signed in for your classes, but we have this recommendation. So can we terminate our agreement? And then I had to sell a whole bunch of different things to make a living. My wife was pregnant at this time, and started my own businesses, consultancy in real estate. And then I got acquainted on Rotary Club meeting with this gentleman, and he invited me to go back to Russia to help him to establish business there. I had actually at this time sort of a turning point. A friend of mine told that I should go to the law school because he was impressed with my ability to persuade people and to pursue this career of litigator. But I decided, let's give it another chance.
And what triggered your decision to go into media, into broadcasting?
I was invited by one of my colleagues whose contract I terminated because she was always late, and she started working for a very popular this time radio station in Moscow, which was called Radio Silver Rain. That was back in 1996, 1997. The broadcaster who was actually hosting the program English with Smile, she was sick, and they were looking for someone who could speak fluent English. And this lady, whom I kicked out of her work, she went, "Oh, my boss, he can speak some English." So I was invited, and instead of 1 hour, I spent 2 hours. And at the end of the broadcasting, the leaders of the radio station, the owners, were actually there, waiting me by the door, saying, "What should we do to get you on list?"
So it was an instant success.
As always in my life.
Your years in the United States.
Yes.
What did they teach you about the US that most of the Russians get wrong about the US, and what did you learn in the United States about Russia that probably the Americans get wrong?
Very smart question, should I say. And it will take us probably a few years to describe it all. First of all, I would say that if domestic principles of the United States back in the 90s would be implemented for the foreign policy of the United States would be one of the most beloved countries in the world. But unfortunately, foreign policy of the United States has nothing to do with domestic code. And that creates a lot of problems. And I love American people. I love America. I feel extremely comfortable in the United States. I'm not talking about liberals. I'm talking about American people, hardworking, honest, very religious, very, in a certain way, they're very much Russians. And the difference between, when we talk about people, Russians and Americans is not that great. Liberals, yes, that's different. But I do not consider them actually Americans. Yes, they may have passports, but they do not respect the fundamental principles on which America is built. And unfortunately, Americans, they have zero understanding and knowledge of Russian people. In a way, the problem is that we do look like Europeans or Americans, like Caucasians. But in reality, the way we think, as if either we or they came from the other planet. We have absolutely different perspective. That's why when you look at Russian people and you try to predict the next move, you're always wrong. Always wrong. That's the big problem. It will be much easier for you if we would be dressed differently. Then you would say, oh yeah, Rudyard Kipling used to say that Russians consider themselves to be the Easters on the West, but in reality they're the Westerns on the East. And that is also not exactly the case. We're not Asians in our mentality. We're Russians. It's absolutely different mentality, different way we see ourselves in the world history, the values. And that's important, and that's what modern Europeans cannot understand. For them, the Second World War is basically yet another war, and not the most tragic for a lot of countries. For a lot of them, the Great War is the First World War. And the Second World War, yes, what misfortune we lost. And they prefer to forget about it. It's not part of their family history. That's why they don't understand what's happening right now in Ukraine. They have no idea. They're not even close. They cannot understand that as far as we're concerned, we're still fighting not the Second World War, the Great Patriotic War. We're fighting Nazis. And for Westerners, when they say Nazis, well, come on, what Nazis? It's bullshit, they're not Nazis. Look, in Germany, not everyone used to be Nazi. Stop blaming us for that. That's part of the history we would like to forget. For Russians, it's like, you bastards killed 27 million of us. They were our grandfathers, grandmothers. The way you tortured and killed us, we'll never forget. And when we see Ukrainians with the German crosses, when we see them with all those symbols of Nazi Germany, that's our family history that gets back. And we'll never forgive that. And they say, oh, come on, Ukraine is just willing to become part of free Europe. What free Europe? Nazi free Europe. What kind of free Europe are you talking about? You'd like to tell me about Bandera, saying, oh, come on, there are different views on that? Members of my family were buried alive by Ukrainian Nazis just for the fact because they were Jews. It's my grandfather died during this war. He was killed on the battlefield. Don't tell me, well, that's history lived in the past. No. And when I'm there, and when I talk with Ukrainian prisoners of war, and when I see on them Nazi tattoo, it takes a lot of will not to tear them apart. Because I know the price of those tattoos that my people paid with their own life and blood.
Is that now the private Wladimir Solowjow speaking, or is this the official Wladimir Solowjow, the broadcaster, talking here?
There's never. That's why people either love me or hate me, because it's always me. I stand for what I believe in. You cannot persuade me or force me to announce something or to pronounce something that I do not deeply believe in. And this year I'll turn 63. And I respect myself, I respect my family, and I respect my views. And I'm ready to die for them. And that's why there were a few attempts of Ukrainians trying to assassinate me. But so far, they failed.
You have 6 evenings a week. Your program, many hours on television. You do a lot of work during the day, since more or less, or even more than a decade. What keeps you running on this intense level of journalistic?
I started working back in 1997 with the 3 morning shows on the radio and a couple of TV projects a week. Then, back in 2014, we had to go with 5 nights on TV broadcasting and 3 programs on the radio, 4 hours. Then we added Moscow, Kremlin, Putin. It's another broadcast on Sunday. So I think that back in 2018, I got this funny award from Guinness World of Records for as a presenter with the most hours on TV per week. What makes me do this? I just love this job. That's the way I live. You know, when people ask me a funny question, aren't you tired? The answer is quite easy. Have you ever seen a fish that is tired of swimming? That's the way I live.
In the West, you are described as a propagandist.
Because they're idiots. That's all. That's normal.
And in Russia, they see you, when I speak to people, as a very important public voice who happens to be patriotic. Where do you see the difference between those 2 perceptions?
Well, first of all, would you mind describing for me the meaning of this word, propagandist? Because if we get back to the tradition of Catholic Church, propaganda is just spreading of belief. Isn't it what journalism is about? The spreading of belief, of views. In Western, they're usually saying, oh, propagandist, that means that I'm lying. Sue me. Find it. Bring it to the table. No chance. Why is that? Because if I'm pronouncing something, that means that I saw it by my own eyes. Don't tell me anything about this war. I spent more than 300 days on the front line. I've been everywhere, and I've seen a lot. And if there's anyone who's trying to tell me, oh, Vladimir, now you're talking about going to the front, fighting for your motherland, but what about yourself? Every weekend, I am with my boys. I'm showing Russian people in the moment of the absolute glory, fighting for the motherland against world evil, world satanism. That's what we're fighting on the territory of Ukraine. We're not fighting Ukrainians. We're fighting you, corrupted by evil West, that lost Christian morality, that lost belief of your fathers. And that's why this war for our people is sacred. And that's why nowadays when we look at the West, we have only one question. What happened with you when you betrayed your beliefs?
As you said, you spent a lot of time at the front line. You're discussing with troops and you see the action there. What is the thing you noticed being there, what the West gets fundamentally wrong about this war?
The Russian soldier. Russian soldier is never a murderer, is never a rapist, is never someone hunting for the treasures of civilians. They do not understand. When they were talking about Bucha, I had this broadcast with Italian guys, with Bruno Vespa. Molto intelligente, molto bravo. Bruno è un leggenda, una persona storica per italiani. And he wanted, just during the program, show me my place. And he told me that we'll have it on there, without any editorial, straight online. I said, okay. He lost completely because he had no idea what he was talking about. Bucha, of course, let's talk about Bucha. Can you name people that were killed in Bucha? What were their beliefs? Were they pro-Russian? Where they were killed? How they were killed? And when they were killed? Zero information. But we know that when the Russian troops left Bucha, there were no bodies on the streets. And only 3 days after Russian troops left. Next day, actually, the mayor of Bucha went there, and he couldn't find any bodies. There weren't any. But then, 2 days after this, or 3 days after Russian troops left, Ukrainian batsman with his murderers came in there, and there are videos of that, saying that kill everyone whom you can see with white banners. And they murdered them. And then British guys from all those funny agencies with the cameramen and with experts on PR, GR suddenly turned in. And here we go. Boris Johnson persuading Zelensky keep fighting. And here's a great reason to cancel Istanbul Agreement. Bucha. 2 major criminals that Ukrainian people have to blame for all the misfortunes of the last 3.5 years after Bucha, 4 years. Macron, who spoke with President Putin, told him, we cannot consider that negotiations can start with a pistol on the head. Can you please withdraw your troops from Kiev? They will sign whatever they have to sign. And Johnson would say, go to war. Kill the last Ukrainian. And Zelensky, that is nothing. And now Macron is surprised why no one is willing to answer his phone calls.
These allegations concerning Bucha, I mean, do you have proof for this,
of
what
course.
you were saying?
Of course we have proof of this. We had plenty of proof. Not only that, if you remember, French people decided to send the gendarmes for investigation of this awful murder. Where's the result of the investigation? Nowhere. Well, then British guys, they said that, well, our pathologoanatomist will actually find out what's the reason of those people. And they studied, I don't think, under 20 bodies. And wow, what a surprise. They were not killed by bullets, but they were killed by flashes from the artillery shells that are not used by Russians, but are used by Ukrainians, because part of the bodies were taken from the graves, and they were killed by Ukrainian artillery, because at this time Bucha was under Russians. So Ukrainians were shelling Bucha, and the population of Bucha that were killed later were used for these accusations. So just check, whatever happened with those two investigation projects of British guys and French guys? Nothing. The only person who keeps asking what happened in Bucha is Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov. No response from European leaders.
There are reports from UN, Amnesty International. They claim it was a Russian war crime.
I don't know these funny people you're talking about. Have they been there? Have they done investigation? Do they have proof? Do they have profiles of those people?
Have you been there?
In Bucha, of course not. I cannot right now. But what we have satellite images provided by Turkish side that shows day 1 when Russian troops were there, day 2 when Russian left, day 3, day 4. No bodies on day 2 and day 3 and day 1. They appeared later on. Then we have, as you know, the documented, let's say, story by the French guy that at this time used to fight on the Ukrainian side, who said that he witnessed. Then we have of the crimes of Ukraine. Then we have videos of this batsman in Bucha given an order to kill all those who do not have yellow lines. That's what we have. And of course we have reports, but also of the British side stating that those victims were killed by artillery shells. But also, let me ask you this question. Can you imagine in modern world that a crime of such magnitude happened with zero video, even by phone, of how it was happening? Can you imagine this? Or have you heard any reports from the families of victims? Or have you seen any social profile of the victims? Were they pro-Ukrainians? Were they pro-Russians? Who are they?
Describe a moment on the battlefield that has changed your perception of this war or how you think about this war.
It never changed because I knew about evil origin of Ukrainian Nazis. But there's one picture I can describe. Kursk, little village. I am working there a couple of days after liberation of this village with Russian engineering troops. And we're looking for landmines to clean the city. And it's like Hollywood picture. Little house, partially destroyed by artillery. Little place that used to be used as a garage. Three-wheel bicycle for the kid. Shoes, kids' shoes. And a black ball with hair, small size. Used to be head of a baby. And it was not separated from the body by the explosion. It was done by Ukrainian Nazis. Every single one of Russians in Kursk, little village, that did not have time to escape, were murdered by Ukrainians and by foreigners that went there to hunt Russians. And they were of different nationality. After I saw this little black ball, I do understand why it's so hard for Russians just to take prisoners and not to kill them on the spot. But we are not animals, so we're not killing them. We're not torturing them. Because we respect ourselves and we respect our religious beliefs. They don't. We don't fight with civilians. That's why 12.5 million Ukrainians since 2014 left Ukraine and they are living in Russia. Because there is no hatred against Ukrainians in Russia. Is this the story that is well known in the West of how many Ukrainians live in Russia and left Ukraine for Russia?
How many?
12.5 million.
When you talk to soldiers in the trenches in the Donbass, what do they tell you? What do they fight for? In their own words, not in the Kremlin's words.
There aren't any Kremlin's words. And that's why Putin is so popular. Because he knows what they feel.
And what do they say? What they're
It's
fighting
a sacred
for?
war. We're fighting for Mother Russia. We're fighting for Russian people. We never wanted to conquer Kiev in 3 days. That's bullshit created by Biden and his team. It has never been stated by our government, never has been stated by any of our officials. That's my point of view, that we should go up to Lisbon. But that's not official point of view.
Have you ever seen something on the front line which you decided not to broadcast and not to report on? And if so, for what reasons?
Well, first of all, I always have to ask people. I will never broadcast something that can lead to the exact understanding of geographic location of our troops, so it won't cause an Ukrainian attack on the exact location of our troops. So that's what we always have to consider. And if one of the soldiers would, for example, ask me not to show his face and not to tell his name because he doesn't want his mother to know that he's on the front line because he's telling her that he is somewhere deep in Mother Russia, of course I won't show this. Or there were quite a few stories when people were telling me that, please, don't tell them my name. Why? Because my family is still in Ukraine. And they're going to be tortured and killed. So it's civil war. That's what's so important to understand. But it's not war for the territory. And we started this war because we were asked by Donbass. And we never ever wanted to go any further. That's the stupidity of Zelensky and his Western... Because of his stupidity, now Ukraine has lost Zaporozhye, Kherson, and will lose many other places as well.
If you had to explain to a thoughtful Western viewer in a minute what this war is finally, from the Russian perspective, fought about, what would you say?
As I mentioned, we're fighting for the right of Russian people to live on their land freely, in a secure, nice way, when the language is respected, when the religion is respected, when they're not oppressed. Westerners look at this war thinking that it started on 24th of February 2022. But in reality, it started in Maidan in 2014. But Westerners didn't want to see tens of thousands people in Donbass being killed by Ukrainian military. They didn't want to see this war that was ongoing for 8 years. They didn't want it because they're always blinded by the multi-century hatred against Russians. That's in your blood. That's in your gene code.
But that's a cliche.
No.
I mean, you know very well.
I know very well that it's true.
Yeah.
I can explain why. If that would be a cliche, there won't be unique laws against Russians nowadays. If you're a Russian citizen in Europe, do you feel the same? Your rights in financial institutions, in legal system, everywhere, has been cancelled. For example, my property has been seized, even without any proper judicial decision. No court hearings, not my point of view, nothing. They just seized it. Not for the first time in the history of Europe to seize something from Jews. That's quite normal for Europeans. They could not fight this historical belief that Russians should be eliminated. You even started with canceling Russian culture. That's why we look at you and think, oh, come on, yet another story. Every single century, Europeans are willing to get together to be heavily beaten by Russians. Okay, let it be this time, but this time with nuclear stick.
That's the political side
No.
of now. I agree. But you said it's like genetically coded. But as you know, there are many people in Europe, even as we speak, who disagree with some of these things you just mentioned.
Really? That's amazing. How many people in Europe, and how many people were in Nazi Germany that actually would disagree with Hitler, but they preferred to take their coffee and go to work because it was extremely dangerous to express their feelings. But immediately on May 9th, or in Europe that will be May 8th, they suddenly felt like, yes, we were always anti-Nazi. Finally, we won. Oh, and by the way, also if you don't know, French guys also won the Second World War. They were also one of the great nation that fought on Hitler's side or against Hitler's side. How many soldiers actually fought on the Hitler side? What happened actually with this Legion Charlemagne? Where did it finish its fight? Wasn't it Berlin? Oh, they were probably fighting hand in hand with Russian, Soviet and American troops. Oh, they were fighting against them. But of course, we do remember de Gaulle, and we do remember, with all respect to partisans.
Why do you think Russia could not bring along its narrative of the whole development in Ukraine? Why,
to whom?
To the West. Why couldn't you explain better what it is all about?
Have you seen me often on European shows?
Not you. But your government.
Your government? Our government. Well, yeah, I do remember a couple of times when Mr. Lavrov gave an interview that were not translated widely on the programs. Oh, I remember when our President, Mr. Putin, actually answered questions of Americans and other journalists, and that's interesting, but they decided not to translate some of his phrases to the Western audience. They decided, well, they decided to edit it a little bit. Because you're afraid to hear our voices. You're afraid to realize what we're saying. You're afraid to show it to your people. Because you are scared, because you know that we are right. Because if I ask you one easy question, what are your beliefs? You tell me, well, we have European values. What are they? What are the European values? Homosexuality? Satanism? Pedophilia? Don't tell me that your values are private property, they're sacred. Don't tell Russians. You seized enough of our property. Well, don't tell me that it's legal system. Come on. What you've done with your legal system, it's a joke. Don't tell me that it's democracy, the right of people to vote. In what country can you directly elect your leaders? In France, where president is always playing funny little games? The only person that can fight is the lady, so he beats her twice? What country? Every time when People's Party, doesn't matter, you call it immediately, well, they're pro-Nazis, they're ultra-right, no, they're bad guys. And you do whatever you can in order for the most popular parties not to get a chance to come into governing position. Thanks to technology. Germany, how many people voted for the Chancellor? Oh, no one. Yeah, right, I forgot. He's not the one who's been elected directly. What country? Oh, yes, there's also United Kingdom, formerly known as of Great Britain, and not now it's just Little Britain. And those funny guys, they're not part of the European Union, they're part of NATO. Well, yeah, definitely there you can believe your own government. You can believe in it, and you can even elect it, right? Wrong! Prime Minister, yet another meaningless punk. No one even wants to remember his name. How many people voted for him? Well, I'm not talking about this elderly prince who finally became the king. What democracy? In what European country can elect their own government? We can. We voted for Putin. He is our president. He is one of us.
But this is a caricature of Western government. Of course, these governments are elected.
Fight me.
I mean, they will be elected out of their offices.
Tell me.
Sure.
Directly,
you will see.
who has been elected?
Yeah, you will see.
Sure. Who has been elected directly? Prime Minister of what country? President of what country has been elected directly?
Come on, this is the constitutional system of this system.
Constitution of what country?
Come on.
Germany. You don't have constitution in Germany. You're not German, so it's not to you. Germany. They don't have constitution. Let me remind you, it has been written by Americans, and they still do not have their constitution. What country?
Okay. My point here is...
tell me, what country?
You are a highly intelligent guy.
Yeah, that's
of
why
course. No, of course.
Fight with me. Tell me.
Tell
me European point of view.
I want to hear from you whether you're really convinced that your government made no mistake in selling its point of view on Ukraine. One could argue that Russia has utterly failed in presenting its case for this war in Ukraine, because the relationship between Russia and the West was not so bad as it is today. And you are telling me it's only the fault of the West.
Of course.
And this is a caricature of the situation.
It's not the caricature. First of all, you're not in a position for us to present your point of view. You're not fucking judges. You're not superior.
I agree.
You're just basically no one that built their fortune on Russian affordable natural resources, that lied to us on every single turn of our history. You are the people that brought to us yet another war. You are the people that were always willing to get whatever they can get from Russia for nothing. That suddenly consider themselves to be, oh, we are Europeans, we are superior. In what case? We've always beaten your fucking asses. Why, at certain moment of history, you decided that you can judge us? That, well, Russia is not democratic enough. Russia cannot be part of NATO because their standards of understanding freedom is... You've been occupied territory since 1945 by American and British troops. Suddenly decided that you have a voice of your own? With your political structures being raised up by George Soros and others? With people so corrupted that almost every single leader of France spent some time in prison? German leaders that fighting one each other? Ursula von der Leyen, been well known as one of the worst human creatures in terms of stealing money of European taxpayers. Oh, of course, you cannot go into this because that's COVID story. Yeah, that's the story that Europe is not willing to discuss. We have to present our position to you. You're the one who lied to us since 2014 during Minsk agreements. And now, when we're getting truth from Angela Merkel and others saying, yes, we're lying to Russians because we wanted Ukrainians to get back. You're the one that spread NATO to our borders in spite of the fact that you promised Russian government and Soviet government before that there will be no one even single step made toward East. And you something telling us? You that could not even find the terrorist that destroyed, pipelined the Nord, whatever,
So
Nord Stream.
I'm taking now the neutral position of the Swiss interviewer and try it again. A non-judgmental question. I see only the Europeans are judgmental. Vladimir Solowjow is not judgmental.
I'm not.
You're an objective, neutral voice. No, but I just wanted to hear from you. Do you really think that your government made no mistake in the build-up of this whole conflict in selling the Russian position?
First of all, we don't have to sell our position to anyone.
Of course, that's called diplomacy.
No. Diplomacy can be made only with countries that respect international law. You, as an entity, you do not respect international law. That's why at first you started war in Yugoslavia. That's why, with your blessing, Libya has been destroyed. That's why you supported every single colonial war that been led by United States in the East. Afghanistan, Iraq, and now war in Iran that you don't know what your position is. You're not even close to the understanding of what diplomacy is about. That's why we cannot even consider you be part of this game. You basically took advantage of the stupidity of last years of Soviet government, when we were so madly in love with Americans and you. And we thought that, yes, right, we will open ourselves and you will bring us the light of this knowledge of democracy. And you lie to us every single time. Germans, the best example. Germany exists nowadays only because of Soviet Union and Russia. At first by Stalin, and then by Gorbachev. And what's the payback? German panzer on Russian soil? No, guys. Berlin has to pay the price. And not only Berlin. Well, Austrian guys are extremely smart. I have to admit that. Austrians extremely smart. They managed to persuade the whole world that Mozart used to be Austrian and Hitler not. That's the smartness. And that's where it ends.
What?
Am I presenting my point of view?
Well, I have a cognitive I have a cognitive dissonance here because I feel myself catapulted in one of the programs of Vladimir Solowjow. But I have to remind you, this time you are in my program. But it's your point of view that is important. I don't want to force my point of view upon of you. No,
that's what I love.
No, I'm curious.
Please do. Curiosity kills the cat. So please do. Go ahead.
I have to tell you. Okay, I ask you. I think you're too intelligent to believe everything what you say. I mean, you are really a gifted performer.
You are coming from this perspective that if the person is intelligent, he has to be somewhat fake.
No, differentiated, and
that's the difference. I do know Italy quite well.
Sorry?
I do know Italy quite well.
Yeah.
I love Italy. I used to live there. I have a lot of friends there still. I love Europe. I spent quite some time in Holland. I spent quite some time in the United Kingdom. I speak languages. Most part of people in Europe that are judging Russia, they don't speak Russian language. They have no knowledge, but they judge us. When we look at you, we know exactly whom we're dealing with. When you are looking at us, you have zero knowledge. And it's good, because every single move you make is wrong. That's good.
And every single move Russia makes is right?
We don't make any moves so far. We're concentrating, but we will make a move. We always do. Russia cannot be always right. Of course, we made a lot of mistakes. Of course, our government makes a lot of mistakes. That's the question. This happens Every government makes mistakes because we are in deep waters and no one knows exactly what's happening next day. And it's extremely different world. Who could predict that quite soon there will be a war between the United States and the former European alliances for Greenland? And that is coming, whether Europeans like it or not. And by the way, in this war, Russian and American soldiers can be once again allies. And we can fight maybe against European evil Satanists. Who could predict even, let's say, 100 years ago that in Europe there will be laws basically anti-Christian? Because all those laws, again, for homosexual families, for the same right for the families. That's actually basically, you understand, that it's anti-Christian. That's anti-Christian.
I have to tell you, I mean, it's actually, I want to ask you questions, but I have to say, I'm deeply skeptical, to say the least, when one brings in these kind of biblical categories into politics, because as you well know, the history of Europe is full of the misuse of the Almighty. Exactly. And people who talk about God mean themselves most often the time. And if you say this is Satanism, I always think somewhere in my brain, but probably I'm wrong, I think, well, Wladimir Solowjow, he's a great polemicist, but does he really believe what he's saying?
Of course. Because I'm willing to pay with my life for what I believe. And I'm the one who is hunted. And I'm the one who is under all possible sanctions of all possible countries. And I'm the one whom Zelensky pointed and said, I want him to be killed. I know. By the way, being intelligent, you understand that at a certain moment of time I could say, I feel like Russia is wrong. Well, my motherland should never behave like this. Well, I'm willing to go to the West and express my feelings. Can you imagine immediately how many digits, how many zeros will be after certain digits on my bank account in the West? I will have everything.
Have you ever doubted your position? I mean, you have millions of viewers every night on television. They're listening to you, they're trusting you. Have you never doubts? Are you always full of self-confidence? And if so, wouldn't that be totally dangerous? Because, as you know...
It is dangerous as an intelligent person, as you believe. Of course, I'm always thinking. When the war started, I couldn't sleep for almost 2 weeks. And I spoke with my mom.
What did she say?
And I asked my mom, I'm really afraid. And she said, what are you scared of? Being killed? I said, no, that's the last thing I'm afraid of. I think it's rather weird to be afraid of death, because that's the only promise that life keeps, death. I told my mom, I'm afraid to be wrong. And she asked me, son, are they Nazis? I said, 100%. Are they Bandera supporters? I said, 100%. Then we are right. Yes, we made a lot of mistakes. And, yes, and by the way, when we're talking about those sacred items, in Russian tradition, it's completely different from the Western tradition. We have absolutely different religious history.
Are you religious?
Yes, but as a Jew. And I'm always stating that. I'm never trying to...
And what would you say is the most important message from your religion to yourself, which is important in your work, in your way of looking at the world? What's the most important thing?
At the center of the universe is not a human being, but it's Almighty. It's not our ego that should lead our deeds. There's much more important reason for the person to be in this world than to satisfy his ego. There's a lot of things that much more important than my life. It's not around me. And that's what Russians is about. We all die. But for what purpose? For the motherland? For our people? Yes. Ego is not important. Mistakes that we made, we started too late. Well, there are reasons why we couldn't start before, but we should. You know, when I understood, I had this feeling that I cannot trust Europeans anymore. That was May 2014, the tragedy of Odessa, when people were murdered in this Dom профсоюзов. Ukrainians were happy with that. They celebrated that. They had menu in the little cafeterias and restaurants with fried Colorado. That means fried Colorado, they named the people who have Russian beliefs. They loved it. And Europe found zero words. They kept supplying Ukraine with weapons and supporting Nazi government.
In war, the temptation to see the enemy in darkest terms as a Nazi, as evil, as Satanists, this temptation is big. But isn't the responsibility of a broadcaster of your status, speaking to so many people coming from a religious background, not also to explain from time to time, my viewers, do not forget, our enemies might be our enemies, but they are human beings.
Have you ever seen even one program of mine? I'm telling this every single program, that we do not hate Ukrainians. And that we have always...
the Satanists in Europe, I mean, this is not a charm offensive.
At the same time, we're saying that in Russian religion, that's what Europe we don't send. We do not hate the person, we hate the sin. We always separate people from the government. We're always saying who is it, not the whole Europe, never people. In Russia, that's why we do not hate European people. That's why every time French guys, British, have you met any hatred on the streets of Russia when they find out that you're a foreigner? Never. We always separate. That's why we don't have, in Russia, we never had religious wars. Whenever there's Warsaw night, nothing like that. And that's very important. That's why when we address in religious terms, we're talking about beliefs. When you look at Alex Karp, when you look at Palantir, they are Satanists. And they're not even trying to...
Well, Alex Karp would disagree. I know him for...
Yeah, you know him, and he's Satanist. Just read his letters. Read his late statement, this techno-fascist manifest. Read his book. When he was happy, he personally said that, yes, you know, we are targeting and we're helping Ukrainians to find targets in Russia. He killed Russian girls. That's what Europe decided not to discuss, this strategy in Starobelsk. Russian girls were killed and they were buried in the wedding gowns. They were killed by Alex Karp and American and European weapon. Do you think after this we should love you?
No. But you cannot blame the weapons for the use of the weapons.
Oh, yeah, right. We cannot blame the weapon. How come? How nicely? Especially when those weapons were not even sold. They were given to Ukrainians on the money that had been stolen from European taxpayers. Oh, sure, we shouldn't blame them. Of course. But we should destroy all the factories that manufacture them, right? And when America and Israel destroyed nuclear scientists in Iran, Europe didn't say a word. That was perfectly normal. Or when they killed all those people with pagers, oh, that was perfectly normal. Or when they killed girls in the school saying, oh, too bad. Well, yeah, they were in the wrong location. 168? No sanctions against states of Israel? Of course not. How many Russians should be killed that you would say, no, we don't trust you? Like this Danish motherfucking bitch said, yeah, sorry, there's another name, ambassador, yeah, that's how you pronounce it rightly. Not motherfucking bitch, but ambassador, yeah, right, sure. I should put it somewhere in mind. She said, no, we don't feel ashamed. You're Russians, we don't believe you. It's always you Russian propaganda. You don't have independent media. No, we cannot prove that what you are saying is right. Fuck you, people! If you don't want to believe your own eyes, go to this little location in Sarabelsk. Oh, you can say like CNN, oh, unfortunately we're on vacation, we shouldn't get, oh, BBC. No, we cannot show it to the people. No, we don't want them to see the world, yeah, to know the truth. And after this, well, you should prove to us your point of view. Fuck you, people.
Free speech in this program.
Yeah,
The first
sorry.
Free speech.
I shouldn't pronounce the F word.
No,
right?
free speech in this program. Well, of course, you have the full responsibility for. I saw you were watching. We were looking on your watch. I hope I'm not boring you because we still have a lot of questions. You have a lot of questions here. I have to ask you.
I'm not asking you not to.
No.
No, you can beep the.
No, we will. We're on Swiss terra externa. No,
Switzerland.
The first
after sanctions against Russia.
We come. Okay, we get to that later.
Oh, okay.
The first thing I heard consciously from you was your famous saying in your show, which was displayed in all over Europe. They were saying, crazy Solowjow, he's now totally, he runs amok. You were saying in your program, Great Britain should watch out because Russia would send some kind of weapon that would Poseidon, that would drown England, Great Britain, in a monster wave, in a nuclear monster wave.
Yeah, that's how it works.
And now looking back at this episode and thinking about it, you were telling me when we spoke about it, you said this was Monty Python-esque kind of black humor.
No.
But now, honestly,
actually, it's not black humor. That's what's going to happen.
But that's what you say. But honestly, looking back at some of your more drastic expressions that you have uttered on the screen, don't you think sometimes when you re-listen to them, I went too far? No. Do you always feel when you're crossing the line?
Unfortunately, I don't have the red dot. Come on.
You were born without the red dot?
No, unfortunately, I don't have the red dot, you know.
The red dot of?
Yeah, nuclear power.
Okay.
Okay, let me put it this way. Britain. Have you ever heard about storm shadow?
No, but
have you ever heard about?
I asked you about your inner red line, that you go rhetorically too far. Did you say
never.
this is just provocation?
I never go too far. If they do not hear my words, they would hear the explosion. They have to understand that what I'm saying is it's just a point of view of a very modest journalist. I don't have any official government position. I'm a free journalist.
When did you, for the last time, criticize your President Putin?
All the time. Every single day. I want much more drastic actions. Much more drastic actions. I want certain changes.
You think he's too soft?
Well, we have different level of responsibility, so that's why obviously our president has much more information, but I would definitely change a lot of things inside Russia and in our foreign policy and the way we fight. I am pro use of nuclear weapon. Unfortunately, it's inevitable.
You're pro?
I don't want it, but it's inevitable. That's the only way to make you listen. You do not understand. You started back in 2022, Germany started with, let's send the medical help. And look what's happening now. German Panzer. You started, well, we don't want to be part of this war, and look what's happening now. Whatever Ukrainians have to fight with is supplied by European factories. You, funny enough, call them Ukrainian, but they're not Ukrainian. Storm Shadow, as well as many other missiles, they are of either British or other foreign origin. And you help Ukrainians to target them, you lead them, you working for them as a source of intelligence, and you stated it. So you're part of this war. In this case, you're an enemy, and you have to be destroyed. And if we have to destroy you as an enemy, we don't want to fight a conventional war. We'll have to use whatever we have. It's not me and my point of view. It's just the law of war. Or you think that you can kill our girls, you can kill our civilians, and it will be just okay? And after this, you can sleep nicely in your houses thinking, well, it's never come back to us. Are you serious? History hasn't give you a lesson? Or you seriously believe that we'll fight the same war as we're fighting against Ukraine? Have you ever heard this expression, unprovoked crucial war against Ukraine? All the time, right? Can you tell me the ratio between civilian and military casualties in this war? You know?
Tell me.
And what do you think?
Listen to you.
Just approximately.
The International Red Cross has told on several occasions that in the war in Ukraine, the number of civilians killed is much lower than in any other war in the 20th century.
In this case, how come this war became the most crucial? Maybe that means that there is something you do not understand?
No, that means that on all sides in a war there is propaganda. Of course there is propaganda in Europe. There is also propaganda in Russia.
No. We are not saying anything. You are claiming that Russia is fighting awful, blah, 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 cruel war. But you haven't used the same words when Israelis were killing Palestinians. You haven't used the same words when Americans and Israelis were killing Lebanese and Iranians. Never. Why is that? Maybe there is something about this war that you do not understand. If we, after very powerful attack against Ukraine, where we destroyed a lot of military facilities, and there's only one person killed, and of course every single human life is sacred, but we don't know how he was killed. Was he killed by anti-missile rocket or by direct Russian? And the night before, 2 nights before, more than 20 Russian girls were killed by single Ukrainian strike done by European weapon, thanks to Alex Karp and his Palantir, and thanks to Elon Musk, because Starlink was found on this place. So who is fighting war against civilians? But the West said, no, we don't know it. We don't know, we don't believe it. Russians, how could you? If we would like to wipe off the whole Ukraine, we could do it in no time. But we not hate them. We consider them to be our brothers, part of us. That's why we fight this war this way.
You made a very grave statement before, and you were saying, I'm pro-nuclear, I'm not in favor of this direction. Now my question is, how far are we actually on the escalation ladder? Because at that moment when you said that, I said, thanks God, Vladimir Solowjow is not sitting in the Kremlin and having the red button in his reach. But where are we now objectively on this escalation ladder?
Here. It's like this.
Do you think there is serious discussion in the Russian leadership of expanding, escalating this?
It's not a question of discussion. I wouldn't be definitely in the circle with whom it will be discussed. I'm just a journalist. It's our nuclear doctrine. According to our nuclear doctrine, we could already use our nuclear weapon against our enemies. There were a couple of cases.
But there are people who would disagree. In Russia, they would say, no, our nuclear doctrine says only if Russia is existentially threatened.
Not only.
Sorry?
Not only. If you read it all, there is an article when they're trying to hit our nuclear abilities, for example. And the Ukrainian British operation against our strategic aviation was one of it. That could be the reason. But listen, for example, if Baltic states and others would like to implement the blockade of Kaliningrad, or if, for example, there will be invasion of Polish and Ukrainian troops on the territory of Belarus, are you seriously considering us to fight the convenient war? You have a population of 500 million people. It's 3 times bigger than ours. You have almighty military-industrial complex. Why do we have to fight it the convenient way? No. That's what nuclear weapon is about. That's not that I want it. I just understand that that's the way it would be.
You think it's inevitable? How high is the probability?
So far, it's inevitable.
Inevitable?
Unfortunately.
The train cannot be stopped.
There's no one on the West with brains to evaluate all the risks. They think that Russia is bluffing. They do not understand our president. They do not understand our military people. They do not understand the Russian people. They always think about Russia as country of Untermensch. They always think that they can trick us. They always think that, no, Russians, they won't do this. No, they wouldn't dare. And that's the problem.
But isn't that...
That's awful.
Isn't that ultimately, Vladimir, with all due respect, isn't that not a cynical position? I mean, you're one of the...
That's not that
one of the large... You are one of the very successful communicators here. Your voice has influence. I mean, if you're saying in the West, they're all Nazis, they're all Satanists, etc. I mean, in your position, if you really think that we are in this escalation ladder, you should communicate, reach out differently.
To whom?
To convince people in the West.
Come on, I'm under all the sanctions. You, for this interview, going to be under a lot of pressure. When Italians are trying to make an interview with me, there's another Piccirini, whatever her name is, from the parliament, that actually raised hell against those little people from LA4, banning them from talking with me. That's the major problem.
Yeah, but sometimes in such a tense situation, the great communicator has to use different words, because words can be weapons.
Of course, and translate them through whom. Let's see what will be the future of this interview, but the important thing is, and that's too bad. Yeah. For example, Europeans are now saying that, okay, let's try to communicate with Russia. Yeah, right. And here's immediately this Kaya Kallas girl with 0 brains. And she's stating, yes, but we want Russia to limit its military, and they have to withdraw the troops from Moldavia and from Georgia.
So now...
Can you imagine anyone in Russia after this communicating with her? Or, for example, can you imagine anyone communicating with Merz, with Macron, after all that they said about our leader, about our people, about our country? That's the problem of Europe. You have 0 leaders to talk to. Zero.
And how does President Putin think about this?
Ask President Putin.
What do you think?
I think that President Putin knows exactly how he thinks.
Sure. But he's a pragmatist. And people I was talking to are saying he would not go into this direction. He would say, this is too crass, what you're saying.
Yeah, under the same people that were saying that President Putin will never start this war against Ukraine. No? Are the other people? Aren't they the same people that say, no, come on, Russia would never do this. Oh, come on, how could Russia do this? No, well, Russia won't last. If they do this, Russia won't last for 3 months.
So what's your message to our Western European viewers?
Stop.
What should be done to prevent this?
Become realists. First
Armageddon.
Of all, and that's, once again, that's not what I'm willing to. And when they call, in my point of view, cynical, it's realistic. You see, you have to understand the origin of this war. It's not about territory. That's the problem with Westerners. They cannot understand the roots of the conflict. They just, for most part of Europeans, religion is nothing. The way you talk about religion, it's yet another old fairy tale that probably heard something about when you were growing up. But come on, it can't be a reason for that's how it sounds. But
terrible cliche.
It's not a cliche.
Absolutely untrue. But it's your opinion. But it's absolutely untrue. I mean, there are many people in Europe who talk about religion in a very serious way.
Yeah, right. Amount of Christians in Europe.
For example, myself.
Yeah, but amount of Christians in Europe diminishing every year. Amount of churches that have been closed, unfortunately, is growing every year. Amount of religious views in modern day politics is not even announced, because basic democratic values nowadays are anti-religious, should I say. So you can be whatever you think about yourself, but then from our point of view, let's say from Russian point of view, your religious views can be hardly called dominating in Europe about your personal.
You're of course right in describing this overall decadence. One can see these developments after 30 years of affluence in Europe. But as you well know, we have some kind of tide change in politics right now in Europe. You see the growing discontent of a lot of voters. I mean, the politicians you use here, these politicians are, you could say, walking dead people. They have no majorities left. They are afraid of losing power. So aren't you trapped in a view of the West which is underestimating Europe? I mean, you're saying the West is underestimating Russia. Aren't you underestimating the West?
It's okay.
Europe?
What Europe? Europe of whom?
Of the people who are not, who are disagreeing.
Sure, if they disagree. Have you seen them on the streets? Have they seen them stating their views?
Yeah, you see them on the. They can vote. They can vote their governments out. Do you see the results of our elections?
Do you?
Yeah, do you see? Yeah, sure.
Who's running your country? Are they the one who won the election?
In Switzerland?
Yeah.
The people are running the country.
Right,
we have a government which is strongly controlled by.
Exactly, and the country that finally decided to give up its neutral status. And that suddenly decided...
A mistake, in your view, from Switzerland?
I'm not a Swiss citizen. I don't care less. I don't care less. Do whatever you like.
If you were so careless, you wouldn't mention Switzerland.
There's no one single Russian person who would trust you with our money. I'm not wearing Swiss watches anymore. And don't offer me Swiss chocolate. You're against our country. You betrayed your neutral status. It's your choice. Okay. That'll be our choice. You gained a lot, you've lost it all.
The American President Trump.
Yes.
Is he the man who can stop this development on the road to hell?
Sounds like a great song, Road to Hell. Well, it's extremely important because you get into this very important, I would say, moral discussion. Let me put it this way. From Russian perspective, what came from Europe? Fascism, Nazism, slavery, Untermensch and Obermensch. What good came from Europe? You cannot find even one single European country, maybe Switzerland, that hasn't gained from colonies, from robbing other countries and people, from humiliating them, and been always in a position that they think that they have this moral advantage, that they can tell everyone else what to do and how to live. Isn't it? The way we see you is completely different from the way you see yourself. You think that we have to explain you something. We think that you should explain yourself to the world and admit responsibility for all the evil and all the deaths that you brought to other continents, for disrespect to the countries and people that suffered from European countries, starting from Belgium in Africa, France in a lot of colonies, Germany. It's hard to find a country that has not actually created awful crimes against humanity in its history. But Europeans think that it's okay, and they're still in a moral position to teach everyone else, democracy and other stuff. We are now fighting war. We're not fighting against Europeans, once again. We're fighting against evil. And it's up to Europeans either take it or not. Let me remind you that we even managed somehow to find words and to even help Germans at certain moments, in spite of all the awful crimes that they committed in our motherland. But now, when there's a common European narrative about million German ladies raped by Russian soldiers, and it's bullshit.
After the Second World War?
Of course. It's complete bullshit. The only army in which there was criminal punishment up to death sentence for the crime against civilians was Russian army. Of course, there could be certain cases, but for those cases, people would be killed by the decision of the court.
Well, I'm not here to debate you, but I would say on this point, you would have strong evidence against your case.
Yes, and we have strong evidence.
Let me try again.
But you have strong evidence about what Americans' troop did with Germans, with Italians. That you would have strong evidence. But all the strong evidence that you would start exploring, suddenly you will find out that a lot of it is complete fake.
I try to find in this conversation, I'm desperately trying to find the Wladimir Solowjow who once must have been also inspired and fascinated by the West. Otherwise, you wouldn't have taught at American universities. Isn't that too much bitterness now speaking out of you?
That's been completely different West. America of the 90s, Europe of the 90s has nothing to do with modern days. Could you imagine any leaders of modern Europe to be leaders of Europe back in the 90s? Could you imagine people like Kaja Kallas being anywhere close to the European authorities with this level of education and with this, negative IQ? It's not even zero, it's negative. It's disgrace.
Easy targets.
Come on, they are your leaders. Bring me hard targets.
Many people in Europe would agree with you and say we have a leadership crisis in
So it's
Europe.
not my problem, it's your problem. But those leaders are the ones that, once again, $90 billion for the weapon for the Ukrainian Nazis to kill Russians. Oh, yeah, great.
Of course. I mean, we could talk for hours about the sins of our forefathers. I could make a list of problematic political decisions in the Soviet Union. For example, I mean, Soviet Union, come on, it was a Bolshevist system.
What was wrong with Soviet Union? Tell me.
What was wrong with the Soviet Union?
Yeah, what was wrong with Soviet Union? How Bolsheviks were bad?
Gulag?
Of course. And at this time, how many people were imprisoned in the United States? For the political reasons or for being black? Or, for example, what happened with Japanese citizens of the United States and German German nationals and the Japanese nationals that used to be citizens of the United States. What happened with them?
I agree.
One day imprisoned? Okay. Tell me exact numbers that were killed by the Gulag. And you'll be surprised when you'll find out that it has nothing to do with what actually has been transmitted in the West. When you're talking about Gulag and awful Russia, that is true. Would you mind remembering what happened at the same time in Poland?
Yeah,
Huh?
but I mean, do the misdeeds and the crimes of others justify the bad deeds of your own side? No, of course.
So this time, let me remind you, why are you calling this crimes? Because we have to judge it from the position of this historic epoch. Was it any different from what was happening at this time in Free Finland, in Poland, in Nazi Germany, in democratic United States? Well, of course, awful Soviet Union. But what happened with other countries at the same period? Weren't they actually on the side of God, on the good side, on the right side of history? Knock, knock. Who's there?
How do you see the future of the relationship between Russia and Europe? Because we are doomed to be neighbors, or we are blessed to be neighbors.
Why do we have to have any common future? What is there in Europe that we can be interested in? What is there in Europe? For example,
isn't Russia a deeply European influence country? You said from Europe nothing came. This is a caricature. I mean, Russia, which has this
you love
tradition.
This word caricature, right?
Sorry?
You really love this word caricature. Well, isn't it caricature?
It's
of course,
it's a distortion. It's a distortion of reality.
It's
and I take you by high standards.
Well, I'm sorry, English language is not my mother tongue. I don't know any other word to describe this feeling I have. So let's call it caricature. Well, speak German or Italian.
So you must be desperate now to make fun of me. No, come on.
It's really
you have better arguments.
No, of course not.
Sure.
It just.
I mean, there is
I want to help you. It's
centuries of history of a fruitful relationship between Europe and Russia. Switzerland with Russia. We have old relationships.
And other stuff. Yeah, so...
That's all forgotten. You should forget about it.
Nothing is forgotten. Of course, the problem is that you are not Europe. Geographically, you may be... I'll explain my point of view. Geographically, you may be considering yourself Europe. But what used to be Europe? It used to be civilization based on Christian values that came all the way from Jerusalem to Rome, from Rome to Constantinople, and from Constantinople to Mother Russia. And then we were part of this great history of unique religious tradition. And that's the one when Russia, and let me remind you that most part of Russian aristocracy is of foreign origin. There are a lot of Germans, French, Dutch, Scottish, Irish, different roots, and they all worked for a Russian empire. And let me remind you that Catherine the Great was not of Russian origin, like at all. And that in the blood of Russian Tsar Nicholas II, there was only 1/128 of a Russian blood. Of course, we are Europe, not you. You betrayed all that Europe of the 19th century believed in. You made a wrong turn. And that's the problem. At first you get rid of real Christian values. Then you get rid of your culture. You forgot your great authors of the 19th. You betrayed your roots. And that's why you hate us. Because in us, you see what Europe should be. But as I mentioned before, we're aliens to you. And that's why you do not understand when we remember our mutual history. And when we look at Kremlin, you can see part of Milanese influence. And when you look at St. Petersburg and you understand, oh yeah, that's when Perón decided to rebuild Paris, and that's what inspired him. And when you look at Moscow, and you see a lot of signs of Europe that you've lost. You're not Europe. You like Egypt. Of course, Egyptians, they live on the land, but as we understand, they're not part of the ancient Egyptian culture. It's completely different people, different culture, with all due respect. The same happened with Europe. In the 20th century, you lost it. And on the 21st century, you have to fight for being Europe. And quite soon, it will be yet another Europe with different population, with different religion, no longer united by Christianity. And we'll have to suffer or enjoy it. It's up to you. But it's not our choice.
Does the thought ever come to mind that you might be underestimating Europe? I mean, what you're describing here is basically the woke culture.
No.
And there are, it's woke culture. And woke culture, all these phenomena you describe, one could argue this is in some way like Christianity on steroids. Secularized Christianity, you want to be nice to everybody, to every minority, you don't want to offend anybody. I mean, this is woke culture is in some sense.
I have this weird feeling that you either never had a chance to find out what woke culture is about, or you never actually read Spengler, The Dawn of Europe. It's much closer to Spengler. That's the dawn of Europe.
You think so?
It's not woke culture. I basically was very close to traditional philosophical readings
and so we can,
of German culture, philosophical culture.
But as you know, Oswald Spengler wasn't the last word on Europe.
Of course, other words were, let's say, little whispers and not important.
But again, you as a very important and the famous...
I'm not madly in love with Frankfurt
and the famous,
philosophical schools,
and
so
the
I'm
famous,
not like Alex Karpy's madly in love with all those fighters.
Okay, and there's a famous commentator and communicator in Russia. And speaking about Christian values, one very...
And Jews.
And Jews, of course. But you were also talking about Christian values. And we, of course, we owe a lot, of course, to your culture. Isn't it the duty of you to reach out to the enemy and to say, well, we have to find an understanding? I mean, what you're doing, you are actually cementing images of the West.
Cementing this. But who's the enemy? West or you Ukrainians?
The guys you're talking about. Probably myself. I turned myself into an enemy here. I see myself here on the bench.
Well, this guy's an enemy.
You always,
can I get a couple of my bodyguards to eliminate him and get rid of the body?
Okay, now let's go back to a serious conversation here. Now again, I mean, you're overdoing it. I mean, what's the future of Russian and European relationship? Would you say, let's forget about Europe, let's just nuke them, let's put some nuclear bombs on Europe?
Well, first of all, we won't nuke you unless you do the wrong move. That's very important. We'll never ever start first. So you have to provoke us in order for Poseidon to be used and all our mighty weapon. And that's very important. Because, of course, and that's seriously important, every time when I was stating that, I was saying that as a response on. But you have to understand what can cause it. And for this purpose, you have to understand the Russian military doctrine and the way we think. Second, I always say that before we do this, we should let people know that the threat is inevitable and give civilians time to leave these places. We don't want people to be killed. It's not the question of killing Europeans. That's not in our mentality. That's why every time when I'm saying that we have to bombard Kiev, Odessa, Kharkiv, I'm always saying at first, we have to warn people and give them time to leave those places. The same with the UK. That's why we're saying that if this factory is producing lethal weapon that provided to Ukrainians, or it's produced on the factories that it's claimed to be Ukrainians on the European soil, please don't be in the neighborhood, because they potentially may be destroyed, and that can cause harm to civilians. That's extremely important. We're not willing to destroy Europeans and their culture. It's your choice. We're not trying to get you on our side. It's your life you live. It's up to you. It's none of our business. But the same is true when you're trying to lecture us. Don't lecture us. You have zero right to do this. On the relationship, there's no one right now to talk to in Europe. Economically, we do not trust you anymore. Even your German car manufacturers, they managed to say, oh yes, we sold vehicles to Russia, but we do not respect our responsibility. We do not serve those vehicles. Give us money back. That's why what they're saying. You have zero values that you used to believe in. Can you imagine like this back in the 90s? When major manufacturers would say, no, it's your business, none of our fault. Forget about it. It couldn't be. It's reputation. It's ruined. Reputation of European business in Russia is ruined. Now you have zero trust. You betrayed our trust. That's why basically you lost our market. And then all this bullshit about us willing to conquer Europe. How can you imagine 150 million conquering 500 million? To do what? You cannot control this amount of people. You don't have enough police force. We don't speak your language. We don't want to speak your language. Why do we have to train our police force to go into your countries, to govern you? We don't want to rebuild your roads. We don't want to bring you the level of living that we have in our country. And you see in Moscow, the standards of living in Moscow is quite high according to European standards. Why? What is there in Europe? You have mineral resources? Zero. The one that we don't have. You have beautiful women? Well, Russia is a country where our women is definitely, we're proud of them. And they're beautiful. Beautiful nature? Of course. But why should we conquer this? It was enough for us to go there for tourist purposes. Trade-wise, we cannot trust you anymore. You seized our money with zero reason. And you think that you have a right on this. You've stolen our money. And you're using our money against us. And you want us after this not to make you pay the price? Sooner or later, Russians always come for what is theirs. So that's why China. That's why India. That's why even a relationship with other countries that you may not think about, but not with you.
What would you say from the Russian perspective, talking or addressing politicians such as Macron or Merz, what would be the ultimate red line that, if crossed, would lead into this doomsday scenario?
You see, the thing is, we do not react on every single provocation.
But what would be the ultimate red line that these people, because that's, I mean, we are in a responsible discussion here.
You don't have to know this. We will know this. You don't have to know this. Because if by occasion you will suddenly find out what is actually the trigger point, you'll do whatever you can to harm us, but not to touch this trigger point.
But again,
that's your mentality.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be your responsibility? You're not in the general staff of Russia. I mean, we listen to you. I mean, we don't speak Russian. No, but we could.
You don't
After this interview, everybody will listen to you.
Oh, come
so
on.
where would you define the red line? I mean, that's a serious question. Otherwise you're just scaremongering here on this program.
Let me put it this way in order to be understood.
Yeah.
Dostoevsky used to say that the Russians are more Europeans than Europeans. And we Russians, in our mentality, we respect human life. That's why we find this war with extremely low level of civilian casualties. We understand the value of the tear of the baby, based on Dostoevsky. In our history, we never ever destroyed culture and people whom we dealt with, and who became part of our empire. We're not a threat to Europe. We have zero plans of invading Europe. We will start war only if we are forced to, if there's an inevitable threat. There's no better friend than Russians, but the worst enemy that you can ever imagine is Russia. Bear usually attacks without any warning sign. And people may think that, okay, let's play with him. He's no longer dangerous. It's a mistake. We don't need your love. We used to. We wanted to be loved by you. You betrayed our trust. So nowadays, we don't want you to love us. We want your fear. And better if you understand that it's not just words. And every time when we show Oreshnik, when we show Sarmat, you have to be absolutely sure that we don't want it, but we are forced to, we'll use it. That's in our doctrine. Because our president once, in his interview that I was taking actually, told this phrase that I think Europeans should listen and should understand. I asked him, but our concept of the nuclear strike, and it's never preventing strike, it's always response to. But that means that the world is going to be destroyed with our response strike. And he said, I'm president of Russia, and I'm asking myself, and why should be the world if there is no Russia in it? That's a good question. The answer is obvious. We either win this war, or there won't be any world left.
So you would put the existence of Russia, meaning a certain political entity, political system, you would put that above the existence of the world.
Exactly. Because there is no Russia without Russian people, and there are no Russian people without Russia. Land, the form of governing, the country, the state, culture, language.
Now you sound like a medieval prophet, a doomsday sayer, and I know you are a man of humor.
I love it.
And I was just
okay. Finally, I'm a prophet. Okay, here we go.
I was just thinking while you were saying this.
Because
again, does he really believe this, or is Vladimir Solowjow the kind of guy who falls in love with his formulations, with the whole atmosphere, with the magic of his screen presence, and he gets seduced by himself, And at the end, he finds himself uttering these words, which can be seen in the neon light as also slightly absurd.
European definition of absurd is so far from reality that I couldn't care less. You see, that's the difference, you know.
But again,
That's the difference. Let me explain. How many dead people have you seen in your life?
Not many.
Exactly. How many bodies have you seen being brutally melted and thrown into pieces by artillery shells?
Why are you asking this?
I can explain. Do you know what domestic animals will do with corpse on the battlefield? Of course not. The difference between a lot of people in Europe and me is that I know the price of war. And I'm eager to put my life on the front line for what I believe. And I know the price that I'm paying and I'm willing to pay. So it's not caricature, it's not the words of prophet, it's the words of a man who's seen death and life. And unfortunately, there were a lot of situations where I would do whatever I can to stop this from happening. But life is much more profound, complicated than a personal view of a human being. We're living in a certain flow of history. And that's why you may think that, oh, it's just a little game of his. No. The awful thing is that I'm just saying what I witness. It's not that I'm dreaming of and willing to happen. Unfortunately, I just see where it goes.
How do you see the future? What will be the future of humanity, of this world?
There are a couple of jokes on this subject, like, well, there are two plans. First of all, we'll all get reasonable, wake up, start working hard, start listening to one another, and live all together happily ever after. Or finally the aliens will come and do this job for us. The second plan seems to be much more realistic. I'd love to find some words of optimism and I hope that something good gonna happen. But only in the case if European political leaders, the ones that are making decisions, will finally realize what is happening in this world and will finally represent not the interest of their financial advisors, but of people that never elected them, but are governed by them. And nowadays, we're facing awful era of techno-fascism, when you won't even blink when suddenly you'll see that your decisions not are made by you, but people like PayPal Mafia that will make decisions, judgments, and imprisoning through artificial intelligence with the robotic systems. And there will be the most difficult question that you're going to ask. When it all went wrong, and how come that human being is no longer needed for this world?
Are you afraid of this technological future?
I'm never afraid of anything. I'm just evaluating risks and thinking what should be done to eliminate them.
Do you consider Russia an ideal democracy?
There's not such thing as ideal democracy if we get back to philosophical terms of what democracy is.
There is Switzerland.
According to Greece tradition, democracy is already corrupted form of governing, if we get back to Greek terms. That's why the idea of democracy being ideal is quite funny.
We're entering the final stage of our interview. It's time to say goodbye. What do you want your children?
Time to.
What do you want? Sometimes, as Dürrenmatt has said, the world is so terrible, only comedy can save us. Or comedy is tragedy plus time, in a Woody Allen movie. What do you want your children and the children of your children, how should they remember you, your work in front of the camera? What should remain?
There's only one important missing in front of me that actually matters. And only his opinion will finally be of meaning. The meeting with Almighty.
If this war ends in your lifetime, let's hope it will.
Oh, you see, now you're getting realistic, so it may not end. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So
let's hope my lifetime is going to be too short, or the war will be too long. Yeah, go ahead.
And if you would write a book about this war, what would be the title?
The sacred war against Satanism?
I had this suspicion.
Yeah, no, this book has been already written by a friend of mine, Avtiya Laudinov, great Russian general and hero of Russia, and great religious philosopher. Well, you know, the war is always about blood and tears.
So blood and tears.
But, you know, that's the name of the rock group. But you
blood,
know,
sweat and tears.
Yeah, but you know, getting back to serious and important items. You see, that's and I just want you to hear that, and that's not that I like it, and that's not what makes me happy. If you look at humanity, of course, we are predators. And we are the most dangerous predators of all. And man is created for war. Man is not created for peace. And unfortunately, the history of this world is the history of wars. And if you look at the amount of years in the world history when there were no wars, it's almost not significant. Under 60 or 70 out of 5,000 years of existence and 4,000 years of written history. So we have to consider that, unfortunately, every single peacetime is yet another preparation for war. And that's the reality.
And do you think in your life and in your work you have done everything to prevent wars from happening or being longer than they are supposed to be?
Do I have to do this? Is this the purpose? That's the most difficult question. That's why I made the statement before. Because the war is always happening in one man's soul, between good and evil, and this war never ends. You keep polishing your soul. You're trying to find sins. Or you enjoy them, and you're trying to fight your consciousness. They tell you that's wrongdoing.
How do you define good and evil?
No one can. That's why religion is there.
A lot of evil people
Of course,
thought they were doing good.
always. That's why religion is there. If they think that they're building their own religion, you have Martin Luther. You have Anglican Church. Look at them. Anglican Church came from the sin of Henry. Can we genuinely believe that they're still Christians? Difficult questions. But we'll definitely find out the right answer. But only Almighty will tell us. And we won't be able to telephone anyone and tell them what the decision is.
Not even you.
Not even me. I'm not sure that on this audience you're allowed with a cell phone.
Is there a question I should have asked you and I have forgotten?
We've spent too much time for this. No, that was fun. That was fun, should I say.
Vladimir Rodolfovich, thank you very much for this
Anytime,
candid
sure.
conversation.